Hello, this is Lani Milbus, and this is Effing the Ineffable. This subject, this is one that I've been developing for a while. I really have hoped to add to it and hope to provide more depth and make a longer episode, but it can only go so far, in my opinion. So, talking today about how can we define God? What is God? What is this? Aside from all of the religious and personal personifications, I should say, of God, it's where everyone has their individual God and all of these things. How can we define this in a spiritual way that is non-exclusive and where we can get kind of a grasp on it to know why we're doing all the stuff that we're doing in our spiritual work. So the name of this series that I'm doing here is called Effing the Ineffable, and this subject right here is one of the reasons I named it that. It's kind of an attempt to do that. God is said to be beyond words. But we can get some idea of the nature of God beyond just formlessness, infinity, and the various personal forms. We can get something a little more tangible than that. Though the personal forms, I still believe, are extremely useful for focusing the devotion, focusing the love, and focusing our aspirations onto something really concrete in which we can pour all of our heart and soul. There's also a need to understand that God is infinite and also beyond that personal form. That personal form is it's a tool. It's a bridge between here and there. So I'd like to start this kind of as a guided meditation, which will kind of get us in the proper mindset for what I'd like to talk about. So if you would, relax, find a comfortable position, a comfortable place, and take a breath. And just imagine in your mind a geometric wave pattern. A wave has peaks and valleys, is generally symmetrical or appears as such. And think about the things that this represents. A sound wave is how sound travels from a source to our ear. Sound waves can be represented by the geometric wave pattern because it's a similar idea. The geometric wave pattern is two-dimensional, but it's a representation of how sound actually travels through the air. It's a physical reality. High-frequency sound produces smaller or tighter wave patterns. Low-frequency sounds produce more spacious wave patterns, and that is how we interpret the frequency of sound waves. So if you would just meditate on this, the guided portion of this is pretty much over. It wasn't a long, drawn-out thing, but go into contemplative meditation about how sound travels and how we perceive it using the geometric wave pattern to see how we can understand waves as one of the ways with which matter communicates with and interacts with matter. So the frequency of a wave determines how the sound is perceived. Light works in a similar manner. Light also travels in waves, and color is determined by these things. Now, ocean waves, if you look upon the water, look as sound waves do upon the air. You don't see the sound waves, but you can record them and use various digital representations of the sound waves to see that they do behave in a similar manner as the ocean waves. And you can see ocean waves clearly in physical form, especially from above, or standing at a higher perspective on the shore as surfers do before they go out. In surfing, a sequence of peaks is called a set. And imagine you're standing over a pool of water and you drop a stone straight down into it. Watch the ripples form concentric circles expanding outward from where the stone dropped into the water. These ripples or waves are often spaced at first until dissipated. So they're expanding outward and growing larger as they get closer to the shore. If seen from above, a wave set would appear the same way, or a swell, as it approaches the shore. Several lines approach the shore at relatively even intervals. The waves are about equally distanced and a very similar size. And waves of this nature, or within nature, are the essence of material manifestation. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, as commented upon by Swami Mukundananda and presented by jkyog.org, it has a section about waves in relation to God. And it's a beautiful description, so I would like to read the entire thing. It's a paragraph, essentially. So it's talking about the quote from the Bhagavad Gita is chapter 9, 18, verse 18. And the quote is, "I am the supreme goal of all living beings. I am also their sustainer, master, witness, abode, shelter, and friend. I am the origin, end, and resting place of creation. I am the storehouse and eternal seed." And so he describes it, and it gives one paragraph, and then comes to this paragraph that I'd like to read. It says, "To understand this concept from another perspective, consider the analogy of an ocean and the waves that emerge from it. Two neighboring waves in the ocean flow together for some time and play mirthfully with each other, creating the impression that they have a very deep relationship between them. However, after traveling some distance, one subsides into the ocean, and shortly after the other does the same. Did they have any relationship between themselves? No. They were both born from the ocean, and their relationship was with the ocean itself. Similarly, God is like the ocean, and we are like waves who have emanated from him. We create attachments amongst our bodily relations, only to leave everyone upon death, and journey alone into another birth. The truth is that the souls are not related to each other, but to God, from whom they have all emanated." And so I'd like to take that and talk a little bit more about physical reality, material science, and relate it to that as well, instead of just believing these things, because belief is trying to use the mind as a power over something. Those who believe really hard that there is a God and things like this tend to take on a mindset that they are striving so hard for this belief that they're getting something from the might of it, or they're asserting it over their world in this godless world or something. So we don't want to believe this. We want to understand this. Or realization. This is essentially what has been discussed before as theoretical knowledge versus realized knowledge. So the purpose of every incarnation, according to the Bhagavad Gita as well, is to bring the soul to the realization of truth, to dissolve the illusion of separateness. And if we look at physical reality, Water, we're talking about the waves, is made up of atoms. Everything in matter that is matter is made up of atoms as we currently understand. And when a wave travels, it's like a chain reaction. None of the hydrogen or oxygen oxygen molecules that are made up of these atoms from where the wave starts, say in the middle of the ocean, travel with the wave to the shore. When a wave hits the shore, if it started 4,000 miles north, as it does in Hawaii, a lot of those waves originate near Alaska and travel all the way down unimpeded to Hawaii. It's not the same molecules of water that are hitting the shores in Hawaii. They didn't travel across the ocean. It's the energy. It's the wave itself rather than the water that is traveling that far. So the wave passes through these volumes of water, causing them to rise and fall along its path. In this way, your soul is the wave acting upon the atoms that make up your body in this moment. So your body, think of as the water, whereas your soul is the energy, the wave itself. And it binds the infinitesimal particles together into what you call your body, creating a chain reaction that is your human life. Your human relationships, all of that, it's created by the interaction with you through your body with your world. And your soul, as well as the infinite sea of particles through which it travels in material existence, all of it is God. Just as all of the interplay of waves and storms upon the ocean are the ocean. They're all the ocean. Just all of this is God. All souls, as well as all matter and much more beyond our experience, is the body of God. So God is even beyond all of these, in all likelihood. And what makes up our bodies? Flesh. What is flesh but cells? What are cells but, various molecules and atoms? What are these? What makes up atoms? We've heard of quarks and subatomic particles. So as our science grows and our ability to perceive grows, we always discover something else. But we don't ever kind of hit that end. We never hit the end of the tunnel and say, well, this is as far as we can go. This is as far as we can dig. So what causes these to come together, these impersonal atoms? If atoms are all identical, which I think has been asserted for some time, that they're not each individual personalities, they're all kind of the same, perhaps. And quantum theory, as little as I understand it, seems to imply kind of that same thing, that they start to lose any kind of reality or identity, depending on what's being observed. But what causes them to come together? What causes all of these little tiny pieces that make up our bodies to stick together as our body? What is holding that together? And so they're not particular body atoms floating around. Couldn't atoms that make up the molecules in the air be part of our body? Ones that make the part of the water, or the food we eat? They do say you are what you eat, right? So we're using the cells in the foods that we eat to make up a new body for ourselves. There's the theory, I know it's incorrect, that our body replaces itself wholly every 7 years, that every cell in our body is replaced. More in-depth scientific discovery has found cells that they believe do not replace within the brain, but most of them have a lifespan. Skin cells have an extremely short lifespan, and organ cells a little bit longer, but not very long. And so every cell of your body is eventually replaced. You can't say that that's you. that any one of these particular atoms is you, and or these cells is you, and when it goes away, then you are no longer with your body. No, you're not in your body. You're not. Your body is a tool. It's the water to your wave. And your wave is, to God as the ocean is to the wave, or even the cause of the ocean, or, depending how far you want to go. So are these atoms that make up your body really your atoms, or are they going to move on and be something else? The atoms don't die, so they're moving on and doing other things. They're becoming other realities and other bodies and other things. It's like they're reincarnated as we are, according to Vedic tradition and pretty much every religious philosophy in the world. So that is as close as I can get to defining what God is. God is the everything in which we are a part or an emanation, and also that at the core of our being in its completeness. So that this is where kind of the paradox happens, is that there is no part of God that is not within us. And yet we are just a small part of God. There's kind of a duality here that one has to accept, it's expressed in many ways with these philosophies and with religions, that abiding in the Spirit and letting the Spirit abide in me is a spiritual precept that it explains the whole Christ being God and at the same time referring to God as the Father. I and the Father are one. It's the as above, so below concept. So there is a mistake in saying that I, my individual personality, which then is referring to only a small part of myself. Really, when you're saying I, in the personal sense, my name, Lani, am God, is essentially saying my ego is God, and that's where it's amiss. Because that tends to lean over into defining God as this ego over that ego, and that is not the truth. So one has to maintain the paradox of I, the deep I that is the truth of myself, is God, and the same with your I and her I and his I within. That is all the completeness of God in each individual in sort of a quantum sense. That there isn't one person that is more spiritually God or spiritually divine than another. Some may have faster access and have done more work to be able to abide in that than others, and this is certainly the case, as the world has absolutely no shortage of people who are wholly focused on the material and want nothing to do with this reality or even asking these questions. It's easy to let that go. And this is kind of the dichotomy of it, and this is what free will is all about, is that we are given the free will to turn our backs on the truth of our nature, to turn our backs on God, and to focus on illusion, to build up the illusion, to maintain the illusion, to lord the illusion over other men, whatever we want to do. We have the free will to do that. But eventually the energy depletes. So as I think the Bible says, if you're turning away from God, you become as a branch that is cut off and withers, as I believe the biblical quote for that. So it is the essence and the nature of what is God to give us all that we need before we even know that we need it. That we don't need to take conscious effort for gaining what we need if we're wholly focused on gaining the conscious realization of God as our being. If we're doing that, none of the other stuff needs work or thought so much. And we still have our duties. We still have what is presented to us. You still have to interact with the world, and that's where the paradox comes in. Is that you have to, just because you're denying your ego is the wholeness of God, doesn't mean that you cast your ego out and don't do ego things. Like working your duty upon the earth, or attaining what you need to sustain your body in the way that's presented to you. But it shouldn't be a fight. It shouldn't be strife. It shouldn't be a worry. It should just be, this will come, and I have to be open to the opportunity that God presents to me today. And I will do what is asked, and it won't be overly difficult. It will be pleasurable. It will be filled with joy. It will be service to God. It will be of the nature of love. And that's how we transition from the wholly material, often very miserable life into the spiritual life, where we are living by grace, by the grace of our spirit, and these things that we've realized, that we've come to realize. And that's the nature of God. You have this spirit that is constantly wanting to give you everything that you could ever possibly want, if only we would stop running from it. We're these waves running up onto the shore and trying to escape, trying to take this water with us. And we roll back into the sea, and we go back, and that's kind of the way it works. But once we stop running, and once we turn and return to the truth of our being, this holiness, this spirit within, everything we need will be presented to us. There won't be lack. There won't be any of the things that we've struggled with and that have caused us misery in our incarnation. And as it's believed in the Bhagavad Gita, that once you attain that oneness, you're dissolved essentially into that, and don't require the rebirth into the strife that is the material existence. And so all of this illusion has created the need for a personal form of God, so that we can focus on something with our wholly conditioned minds and ego personalities, in order to slough off the conditioning and slough off the illusions that have been built upon us by lifetimes of partaking in this material illusion. And it's easier for us to develop love to a form, to have something material, or a material concept, even though it's not. I mean, we have people, we have spiritual people that and guru who upon the earth can bring this, but typically the form of God within a religion is a person. And the reason that God is presenting itself as a person is that so that we can love it, so that we can love God. And that is how we're used to loving. So love is the path to union. It's the way of yoga, or more correctly pronounced yog. And that is another nature of God. So God lives in the dichotomy, the paradox, as well as we do, because of the creation of free will, creating this illusion where we're conditioned to love the material. Oh, that's just another way it breaks through into consciousness in order to establish the kingdom of heaven right here. So that is the best I can do at this time to define what God is. And that is what gets me going. That is magically what I am seeking to arrive at all of the time. To just live in that conscious awareness of the I at the center of my being the omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, all, only power, only love, only spirit of existence, and to try to share that with others. So that's that. And that's this episode of Effing the Ineffable. I hope something in it was useful to you, and I thank you very much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.